Hi guys, Cinematic Recapped here. Before we start, warning. Spoilers ahead. Today, I'm gonna explain an American science fiction and fantasy movie, called Avatar. In the year 2154 in a futuristic city, Jake Sully, a paraplegic former Marine, is enjoying his time at a bar, where he accidentally sees a woman being harassed by a man. Because of that, he decides to help the woman by beating up the man, but he is kicked out of the bar right after. Suddenly, he is approached by two people from the Resource Development Administration or RDA and taken to a funeral home to learn that his identical twin brother, Tommy, was killed by an unknown person. Before he died, Tommy worked in the RDA as an operator for the Avatar program on a planet called Pandora, so they need Jake as his replacement because his genome is the only one that can activate Tommy's avatar. Jake agrees and is placed in a cryochamber where he sleeps for almost 6 years until the crew arrive at Pandora. After landing at the facility, Jake is amazed to see the rapid development of technology. He then listens to a briefing from Colonel Miles Quaritch, head of the RDA's private security force, who says that the planet's atmosphere is poisonous to humans. In addition, the planet is also inhabited by the Na'vi, a 10-foot-tall species of blue-skinned humanoid that live in harmony with nature and worship a mother goddess named Iwa. Afterwards, Jake meets Dr. Norm Spellman, a fellow scientist who is also a friend of Tommy. He takes Jake to the laboratory where he can learn more about the avatars. To explore Pandora's biosphere, the scientists have to transfer their consciousness to Na'vi human hybrids called avatars, that can only be operated by genetically matched humans. It is revealed that Jake went to Pandora just because he feels connected to Tommy's avatar. He also meets Dr. Grace Augustine, head of the Avatar program, who initially considers Jake an inadequate replacement because he is not a scientist. Thus, she protests against Parker, the administrator for the RDA mining operation. However, he says that they should be grateful that Tommy has an identical brother who can control his avatar. He also shows a valuable mineral called unobtainium, which the RDA wants to mine on the planet. When the avatars are ready, Jake and Norm enter their avatar bodies for the first time. Jake feels ecstatic to be able to walk and run for the first time in years. After he wakes up from the simulation, he meets Trudy, a combat pilot assigned to support the Avatar program. She then introduces Jake to Miles, who promises Jake that the company will restore his legs if he gathers information about the Na'vi, especially the clan's gathering place, a giant tree called Home Tree which stands above the richest deposit of unobtainium in the area, which Jake agrees to. Later, his avatar joins the avatars of Grace and Norm as a bodyguard on their research expedition. As they search for tree root samples, Jake's avatar is suddenly attacked by a ferocious beast called Thanator. Because of this, he runs away into the forest, leaving his team behind. He then makes a spear out of wood to protect himself, but unknowingly, he is being stalked by a female Na'vi named Neytiri. Just as she is about to kill him from afar, she suddenly sees a seed from the spirit tree which cancels out her intention to kill him. On the other hand, Grace keeps looking for Jake's avatar in the forest, but she still cannot find him until nightfall. Meanwhile, Jake struggles to survive the attack of the beasts, until he is rescued by Neytiri. Jake becomes curious about her clan, but Neytiri continues to reject him and tells him to stop following her. At the same time, the seeds from the spirit tree land on Jake, which Neytiri considers as an auspicious sign to take him to her clan, the Omaticaya. On the way, they meet Sute, the heir to the chieftain and Neytiri's fiancée. In the Home Tree, Jake meets the clan's chief and spiritual leader, Atukan and Moat, both of whom are also Neytiri's parents. Atukan originally wants Jake to die, but luckily Moat orders her daughter to initiate Jake into their society. He mingles with the clan and settles in for the night. After he regains consciousness, Jake reports everything that had just happened to Grace as well as to Miles. Miles gives Jake 3 months to convince the Na'vi to move, or else they will bomb their home tree. When Grace secretly learns of Jake's dealings with the Colonel, she transfers herself, Jake, and Norm to a remote outpost in the floating mountains of Pandora. However, Jake still reports his activities to the Colonel regarding their agreement. For the next 3 months, Neytiri teaches Jake the ways of the Na'vi. At one point, she tells Jake that once he is ready, he has to choose his own Ikron, a winged beast used for hunting by the Na'vi, to become a full-fledged warrior. Neytiri also teaches him to hunt the wildlife and understand the spiritual connection between all the beings in Pandora. As time goes on, Jake grows to sympathize with the natives and begins to fall in love with Neytiri. After he is deemed worthy of being a warrior, Jake goes with the other Na'vis to the floating mountains to get his own Ikron. They finally reach the Ikron's lair and Sute orders Jake to choose his Ikron first. The Ikron needs to choose him first by trying to kill him. Fortunately, he manages to take down one of the beasts and bonds with it through the nerve endings on his hair. After that, Neytiri forces Jake to fly with his Ikron to strengthen their bond. As they fly together with their Ikrons, Jake and Neytiri encounter the Toruk Makto, a legendary dragon-like beast feared and honored by the Na'vi. Neytiri says that only a few Navis are able to tame and ride the legendary beast, including her great-grandfather. Long story short, 3 months have passed and the team goes back to the facility. Miles asks Jake for all the information he has, but Jake asks the Colonel to extend his time just until his final ceremony is over, so he can convince the clan to relocate. The day of the ceremony arrives and Jake is finally initiated into the clan. After that, Neytiri takes Jake to the Tree of Souls. This is the most sacred places for the Na'vi, where the memories of their ancestors are stored. They can access these memories by tying their nerve endings to the fibers of the tree. Neytiri tells Jake that he can now choose a wife from the Omaticaya clan. Therefore, he immediately proposes to Neytiri, who happily accepts under the sacred tree. The two kiss passionately and connect their nerve endings, indicating that Jake and Neytiri have chosen each other as mates. The following morning, Neytiri is awakened by the sound of a huge bulldozer tearing the Tree of Souls. She attempts to wake Jake up, but he remains unconscious because he's currently outside of his simulation. As Neytiri frantically drags his body, Jake wakes up and tries to signal the bulldozer to stop, but it continues to plow. As a result, he climbs over the machine and starts destroying the cameras, but the crews also start shooting at him from afar. Jake is forced to run away with Neytiri as they watch the machine tearing down their sacred place. On the other side, the crew catches the footage of Jake's avatar destroying the cameras. Jake and Neytiri come back to the home tree, where he tries to persuade the clan to relocate as soon as possible. However, Sute immediately attacks him, accusing him of mating with his fiancée. Neytiri calms him down and finally admits this, saying it cannot be undone as they are now bonded before Aiwa. Meanwhile, Miles arrives at their outpost and pulls Jake and Grace from the simulators. At the same time, Jake wants to state his final plea, but he and Grace faint before he can say anything. All of them are brought back to the facility and Jake's true allegiance is revealed through a video log, acknowledging that the Na'vi will never abandon their home tree. Miles also shows a video recording of Jake's attack on the bulldozer to Parker. In the end, Parker agrees to Miles' order to destroy the home tree. However, Grace tells them that they cannot destroy the home tree because it can damage the biological neural network native to Pandora. Since the RDA is not fully convinced by her statement, Parker gives Jake and Grace an hour to convince the Na'vi to evacuate before commencing the attack. Jake and Grace regain consciousness in their avatar forms and begin to tell them about the RDA's plans. He also admits that he was originally sent as a spy, but now he has changed. After learning this fact, Neytiri feels betrayed and decides to leave him. Besides that, Jake and Grace are taken captive by the clan. Shortly after, Miles' army arrive at the home tree and start gassing them out. The clan initially refuses to run and fights back, but their arrows are useless against the heavy armor of the aircrafts. The army then fire the missiles at the home tree, setting it on fire. Thus, the Na'vi are forced to flee for their lives. Meanwhile, Jake and Grace are unable to escape bound to their post, until Moat suddenly approaches them and sets them free, telling them that if they are indeed one of them, then they should help the clan. Sadly, the attack ends up killing Adukan and many others Navis. Neytiri finds her father with a shard in his chest. He bestows on her his bow and makes her promise to fulfill her duties as his last words. After a while, Jake finds Neytiri in the rubble, but he is rejected by her, telling him to never come back. Back at the facility, Jake and Grace are detached from their avatars once again and imprisoned by Miles' forces. Trudy, disgusted by Miles' brutality, decides to free Jake, Grace, and Norm. They then hijack one of the helicopters and escape the facility, but Grace has to be shot by Miles in the stomach. The group relocates higher up in the floating mountains, where the RDA cannot reach their outpost easily. Jake gets back into the simulator and makes a plan to regain the Navi's trust. Once he is back in his avatar form, he calls his Ikron to hunt down the Toruk Makto and connects his mind with the beast. With nowhere else to go, the Omaticaya is forced to take refuge at the only remaining Tree of Souls. As they pray to Aiwa, they see Jake coming with the Toruk Makto. At the same time, Neytiri is shocked to see that Jake has managed to tame the legendary beast, which also gains the respect of the Navis. Jake then asks Sute to join him in the fight against the humans, which he eventually agrees to. Jake also pleads with Moat to heal Grace, so the clan attempts to transfer Grace from her human body into her avatar with the aid of the Tree of Souls, but it is too late and she dies before the process can be completed. Together with Sute, Jake unites the clan and tells them to gather all of the Navis on Pandora to battle the RDA. Meanwhile, Jake learns through his intel that the RDA has organized a preemptive strike against the Tree of Souls, believing that its destruction will demoralize the natives. Thus, he devises a plan to use their advantage by luring the humans through the floating mountains and then attacking them there. On the eve of battle, Jake prays to Iwa via his nerve endings with the Tree of Souls, to intercede on behalf of the Na'vi. The following day, the RDA launches their armies along with the bombs, while the Navis wait them among the floating mountains. The clans from the plains takes action by storming the RDA ground troops as the other clans take the first fire, flying around the aircrafts and shooting them down with their arrows. During the battle, they manage to bring down several helicopters, but the RDA's armory is still too powerful for them. After that, Miles spots Jake riding the Toruk Makto and starts shooting at him. Luckily, Jake gets help from Trudy, who shoots fire at Miles' aircraft, allowing Jake to escape, but Trudy's aircraft has to be shot down as well. At the same time, Neytiri's Ikron is taken down by the shot, forcing her to land on the ground. On the other hand, Sute fights heroically at the main aircraft, killing a number of men before he gets shot and falls to the ground. At this point, the Navis are overwhelmed as they retreat deeper into the forest. Unexpectedly, the Pandoran wildlife join the attack and overwhelm the humans, which Neytiri interprets as Iwa's answer to Jake's prayer. Meanwhile, Jake lands on the main aircraft and takes down the machine guns. He then throws a grenade at one of the engines, destroying the aircraft before it can drop the bombs on the Tree of Souls. He also throws several more grenades at Miles' aircraft, but the colonel manages to escape his own damaged aircraft using an AMP suit. Fortunately, Neytiri arrives just in time with the Thanator as Miles starts hunting the outpost. However, he manages to take her down and traps her under a tree trunk. Just as he is about to stab her, Jake appears and fights him. When he feels overwhelmed, Miles begins to target Jake's real body instead. He breaks open the outpost's glass, exposing it to Pandora's poisonous atmosphere. Hence, Jake immediately averts his attention, but the colonel finally grabs his body. Luckily, Neytiri is able to free herself and shoots an arrow straight to the colonel's heart. Moreover, she launches another arrow to finish the kill. At the same time, Jake emerges from the simulator and drags himself to reach for the air mask, but he has to faint after the poisonous atmosphere knocks him out. While Neytiri realizes what is happening to Jake, she gets inside the outpost and puts the air mask on Jake's real body. She finally saves Jake from suffocation and sees his human body for the first time. Back in the Avatar form, Jake and Neytiri find Sute dying in the forest. He begs Jake to finish him off, so he will die with honor. Prior to that, he acknowledges Jake as his brother and passes the chieftainship to him. After the war is over, all humans are expelled from Pandora and sent back to Earth, with the exceptions of Jake, Norm, and a select few others. On his birthday, Jake is taken by the clan to the Tree of Souls, where they perform a ritual to permanently transfer his consciousness into his avatar. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.